So this is not financial advice, it's just a discussion and to get your juices flowing. So I am so excited to introduce Angela Rankun, who I met a few months ago, and we've had such a wonderful and insightful number of conversations already. Angela is a seasoned estate planner with almost 2 decades of experience. She's an associate member of both the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners and the Institute of Professional Will Writers. She started her career at the top as a financial advisor for major banks, often recognized as one of the best, not just in her team, but UK-wide. So specializing in inheritance tax, fantastic person to have, and trust planning. And that's where she grew frustrated with the advice that was being given to people. She decided to build something better. And so she and her husband now run their own farm, offering bespoke planning that truly understands a family's entire picture. She's also a mom of 4. I don't know how she does that. I have 2, and I'm losing my voice with just 2. So Angela, you need to give me some tips on that too.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
She's an ex-skydiver, which sounds so cool, and is currently trying to master French to keep up with her family. So please, everyone, give us a huge, huge, brilliant welcome for Angela Rankun. And I'm so happy to have you here. Over to you, Angela.
Thanks so much, Tina. And honestly, it's an absolute pleasure to, get involved with what you're doing, because what you're doing is amazing, raising awareness, not just in inheritance tax, but financial planning, just dealing with your money in general. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here. So thanks to Tina. But a bit about myself. Yes, Tina has introduced me. I am an ex-financial advisor. I was terrible on pensions. That's what most financial planners do. I was drawn to inheritance tax and trust. That was my forte. I really enjoyed it. But when I was doing that, working for the big institutions, dealing with ultra high net worth individuals, I realized that, everyone out there needed this advice, and it was not fair that only those and such as those could access really bespoke planning. Looking at it as well, looking at the way wills were written, even by, so-called professionals, they were not worth the paper they were written on. There was no thought at all gone into how to make sure you pass the assets safely down to your children, and we just don't perpetuate the problem ongoing. So about 7-8 years ago, said, have to make a choice here to continue trying to do this as a financial advisor, or do we step away and fully focus? So instead of doing investments in general, focus on inheritance tax planning, writing wills properly, and making sure people get the whole picture for their whole estate.
That's wonderful. And it's one of those things that you don't think you need, but we are actually all affected by it. And I always say, and I think we're going to come on to the myths now, which will be really cool, because it's definitely some that I had, and some people have written in to say the same things. But thank you for sharing that, and definitely really cool stuff you're doing. One of the things for me was just the thought that inheritance planning is only for the wealthy. They're the only ones that are going to pay inheritance tax. So they're the only ones that need to do any planning. Is that the case?
No, not at all.
That is so true. I keep talking about leaving money on the table generally with our money, because we always think, oh my gosh, I'm so broke. But if you sit down and reflect on it, you have something that you could be doing or giving. And I do this whole thing about leaving money on your table. And I really think that inheritance tax and planning is probably similar to that.
Okay, nope. So basically, but if we can go through these myth busting, but through the whole session, we'll hopefully challenge all of these and show really who it applies to, who it doesn't apply to, and hopefully get a lot of information out to people.
Okay. Another big one for me that I thought was a given is something around giving gifts during your lifetime. Are they always free of inheritance tax? If I give stuff out during my lifetime, does that mean I don't pay inheritance tax on that?
It depends on the amount. So you've got the annual exemptions of up to £3,000, maybe a bit more for giving children for weddings. You can give as many £250 away to different people as you like. Surplus income, they're all free of inheritance tax. But in general, if you give anything away that is going to make a big dent, if you give away above £3,000, that will remain within your estate for 7 years.
That's crazy, right? Because that's something I didn't realize.
Yeah. So people who have an IHT problem, The £3,000, the annual exemptions will help, and they absolutely should be used, but it tends to be there's other considerations that you need to think about. I'll see many clients and they'll say, I've given a couple of £100,000 away. When was that? Well, it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I'll say that's still in your estate, and the whole lot. And I'll come into things like taper relief. There's a lot of misinformation about all gifts are tapered. That's not true either. So we'll discuss that.
Cool. Another big one for me, and then we'll move on to what we're covering, is passing your house or your home on to your children. My initial thinking was it should automatically avoid inheritance tax. But we had a conversation that was very intriguing, Angela.
So if you sign over your house to anyone, your children or anyone, and you think, well, I don't own it anymore, so I can't, that's fine. That's gone from my estate. If you still live in the house and don't pay market rent, not just rent, but market rent, it is still in your estate, even if it was done 20 years ago.
That's crazy.
It's called a gift with reservation of benefit, and it will not leave your estate at all. And I've seen quite a few families come unstuck with this, and it's been really upsetting to be the bearer. I'm often the bearer of bad news to people, but then I try and make up and help them. But knowledge is power, so I think it's just understanding your circumstances. But yeah, passing your house to your kids doesn't do anything for inheritance.
That is so crazy, because I automatically thought, just hand it off to the children, buy it in the children's names. But if you're living in it and doing everything as the owner, clearly you're still liable for it if you're not paying market rent, which is also a whole other crazy thing. So thank you for busting that myth.
No, that's okay.
The last one we'll do, because we have a very international audience on here, is, does inheritance tax apply to everything worldwide?
That's a really, really complex question. I won't go into huge details because I'll bore you all to tears, but it's not to do with your residency, it's to do with your domicile. So where are you domiciled in the world? So if you were born in Britain and you live here, but even if you were to go and live in France at the end of your life, if you've still got assets here, you will be taxed on your worldwide assets,
So it's based on the country you're domiciled in.
It's your country of domicile. And again, that's a completely separate topic altogether. And again, certain clients have come unstuck with this as well. But the rule is, if you've lived here for, well, they've changed the rules now, but it's going to be, if you're here for 10 years, if you come from another country, but you're a taxpayer in Britain for 10 years, you're going to be deemed domicile and you'll pay tax on your worldwide assets. If you're born here and you move away, but you still retain links to the UK, you will be still UK domicile, and you'll be taxed on worldwide assets.
Good to know. Thank you so much.
Simplification, but yeah, hopefully that gets you some information.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Angela. So please, everyone, if you have any questions, put them in the poll, in the Q&A bit, and they'll get to me, and I'll interrupt Angela as we go. But now we are over to what we are going to cover in this session. I hope the myth busting has helped, some of you already. But we're going to talk about inheritance tax, what it is, who pays it, and then women and inheritance tax, because we're girl money geeks, so we must do that. And then a very, very interesting one, and I'm so glad that we have Angela for this one, is how can I reduce the amount of tax that my family pay? Because that's just been, it's crazy how much more you can pay for if you don't plan ahead, right? And then the common pitfalls, and we'll talk briefly about what a trust is and what we should use up, how we should use one. We'll aim to finish by by 2 p.m. So we'll try and take as many of your questions during the session, but at some point we'll have to have Q&A. If we run over, we'll make sure that we answer each of your questions privately after the session, and Angela's very kindly offered to do that. So over to you, Angela. I am so ready for this.
Okay,
let's kick off.
No problem. So basically, what is inheritance tax? Some of you will know, some of you will have a bit of an idea, but basically it's a tax that we pay when we die. So we don't pay it. So in effect, we shouldn't really be bothered, because it's, it's the kids and grandkids. But joking aside, it is a tax that's paid on death. Okay. And it just depends on the value of your estate. between husband and wife, or spouses, or partners, or civil partners, there is no tax. So your estate could be worth 20, 30 million. If you pass everything to each other, there is zero inheritance tax. It will get paid on the second death. Okay. You can pass on a certain amount, which is called the nil rate band, and that's a bit like our personal allowance for our estate. So we can all earn £12,500 without paying income tax. So the nil rate band is just your estate's personal allowance, shall we say. We'll come on to that in a minute. It is affecting more and more, still 4% of the population is quite a large proportion. That is going to rise because of the recent changes made by our lovely Chancellor last year. That's going to rise to over 7% by 2032. And I can see it rising further because there's just more tax grabs happening. We are in deficit as a country. We're kind of bankrupt. We've got an aging population. We've got less children, being born. It's a big storm that's brewing, shall we say, and they're looking for the easiest tax money grabs, basically, unfortunately. So that's what inheritance tax is in a nutshell. Tax we pay when we die. Okay.
Yeah.
So come on to the next slide. Have you got a question there, Tina, you want to ask me?
Yes, Gloria is asking that if the government raised the 7-year rule to 10 years, will that apply to money already given?
I wouldn't imagine so. I can't say for sure because who knows, but I think there would be absolute civil war out there if they tried to do it. I think people would be up in arms because you've made planning in good faith. I can't imagine them retrospectively, but I can't promise you. I'm not one of the decision makers, but my gut feeling would be that no, I can't imagine they would go back. But going forwards, they may say, well, that's 10 years now. Yes. These are being dangled in front of us that they may change something, such as remove taper relief, such as extend or even abolish the 10-year rule. They may even come up with something like any gift you give to your children will be immediately taxable at a certain percentage. I don't know. But these are all things that are being bandied around just now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think typically it would be, it wouldn't be retrospectively. So would hope that they wouldn't. But, again, this is us just guessing out loud. Okay, thank you for that explanation. Keep the questions coming, people. Thank you for that question, Gloria. Let's get on to inheritance tax and this bit around the bands, because that's interesting.
So coming on to the nil rate bands, there's a lot of misinformation on this as well. So a lot of you may have heard of the allowance, the nil rate band, and everybody will have an allowance of 325,000. So for married couples, civil partners, they can join theirs up. So that's £650,000 can be passed tax-free to their children, grandchildren, whoever they want. Okay. In 2017, the Tory government were always promising we're going to raise the nil rate band. We're going to raise it to £1 million. Well, they did, but they were sneaky and they didn't give it to everyone. So what they did is they said, right, if you have a house and if you have children or grandchildren, this could be adopted children, foster children, they're included, but direct descendants from you, including grandchildren, and you have a property, we will give you, on top of your 325,000, we'll give you an additional allowance of £175,000. So it's up to 175. So if your house is worth 100,000, that's the additional allowance. If your house is worth 300,000, it's an extra 175. If you're in a couple, that's doubled, and that's where the £1 million allowance comes from. So the 325 plus 175. If you're a couple that are married or civil partners, you can pass on a total amount of 1 million. If you're a single person or divorced and you do not have children, but you've got a property, you only have £325,000 that you can pass on tax-free. Anything above that will be taxed at 40%.
So, Angela, on this question or on the issue of, we talked about people who have been widowed, for example, and they've remarried. They can use their late spouse's nil rate bands if not already used. So what allowance does that give them then?
So imagine you've got someone who is sadly widowed, okay, and they're, let's say it's a lady and she's lost her husband, and he has passed everything to her. He has now passed on his unused allowances, his unused nil rate bands. So let's assume that they had children. Okay, so they're qualified for the whole £1,000,000. And then the lady goes and she remarries or has a civil partnership with someone. Her on her own has £1,000,000 allowance.
Okay.
Now, let's say she's very unlucky and she loses her second husband and he passes everything to her as well. And he also has a property that's going to maybe children or direct descendants. That's an extra £500,000. So in effect, she could end up with an allowance of 1.5 million.
That's great. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you
so
for
to be
clarifying
aware
that.
of that, and for families to be aware of every client we see, we ask, have any of you been widowed? You know,
Okay.
how were the assets passed? Really important.
Nice. And now Yekem is asking a question. Is it even worth being worth more than £1,000,000 as a couple?
Is it what? Sorry, could you say that again, Tina?
Is it even worth being worth more than £1,000,000 as a couple?
Well, yes, because it's your money, isn't it? You could be spending it and doing nice things with it. From a tax perspective, it's rubbish, 100%. But if I had the choice of having 1,000,000 or having 2,000,000, I would take the 2,000,000 and I would be spending and enjoying. I would not be worrying about it and trying to keep it and grow it massively. I would be gifting to my kids. I would be going on lots of holidays. This is me personally speaking, okay? Everyone's different. But I would be doing my utmost to gift in my lifetime. First of all, what I'll say is if you're going to gift, always, always, always look after yourself first.
Yes.
You may be worried about your kids and grandkids, but you come first. So make sure you have enough to do your life, to live your lifestyle. And if that involves 4 fabulous holidays a year, do it. Once you've taken that into consideration and you have excess funds, think about gifting, okay? Think about gifting at that stage. And different ways of gifting, which we can go on to in a little bit. But yeah, so yes, the answer is yes, it's worth having more than 1,000,000, but not if you don't spend it. If you keep it just sitting there, it's going to the taxman, or 40% of it's going to the taxman.
Yeah, Kemi says, great point. Thank you, Angela. And I agree. You need to look after yourself first. And I think a healthy couple or a healthy person is better, shows up better for their children. And having elderly parents myself, I would give anything to just go on holiday with them than inherit anything, right? So think about it that way. Your children would prefer to have you living your best life, spending time with them than, hoarding the over £1,000,000 in this case.
100%.
Next bit was around still, we've talked a bit about this, and now we've touched on that with Yekemi's question.
Yeah, I'd like to just focus on this a little bit. So 40%, if you're a single person, with no children, 325. If you've got children with a house, 500. If you're a couple with children and a house, it's 1,000,000. Now, if you're lucky enough to be worth above £2,000,000, this is where it gets a bit tricky. The government are very greedy and they give you an allowance in one hand, but then what they do is they'll say, if you're above £2,000,000, we think you're too rich. So we are actually going to start taking, for every £2 over 2,000,000, we're going to take £1 away from that extra residence nil rate band, that extra 175. So if you're a single person and you get up to 2,350,000, you only have the basic 325 allowance. If you're a couple, once you get to 2,700,000, you're then down at 650,000. And a lot of people think, well, gosh, how many people are out there worth that? You would be surprised. And when we come on in a minute to the changes, pensions coming in, death benefits, life insurance policies that are not in trust, these all have to be considered. And that's why it's really important to have a proper discussion, to look at all of these nooks and crannies to see what is going to actually form your part of your estate.
And I think back to that point of leaving money on the table, sometimes during our lifetime, we keep forgetting where we worked before. I mean, I had a letter come through from my first job around a pension pot that I had completely forgotten about. So it's really something to start thinking about, because you may think you don't have money. However, you do, and you need to start trying to pull it all together and understand exactly what you're worth. Very good point,
Absolutely.
Angela.
Absolutely. So what's the obviously we're all aware we had our nice budget last year where there was a big tax raid to do with inheritance tax. So what did stay the same? So they've froze the nil rate bands, I think until about 2030, I believe. So they've left them.
Yes.
They've been there for quite a while. We can still give away the £3,000 each year. So the sort of small gift exemptions have not changed. And they haven't changed the 7-year rule at the moment. They might change that. They might change that.
Yes.
Okay. The taper relief as well. I'll touch on taper relief. So a lot of people think if I give away £200,000 and I die in year 5, we'll only pay us, we won't pay the full 40% on that. We'll only pay a certain amount. It'll be reduced, it'll be tapered. That's not true. The taper relief will only kick in once you have gifted over 325,000, because all the 200,000.
So Angela,
yeah.
Sorry, what is taper relief? Someone's asking, what is taper relief?
Taper relief is when you gift money away, okay, and or any asset, a house, a property, money, you have to survive for 7 years, okay? And what they allow you to do is if you're unlucky, and let's say you get to year 6 and you pass away, you're just 1 year away from that 7-year being finished and the money leaving your estate, okay? So there is something called a taper relief to say that after you've survived for, say, 3 years, you'll pay less inheritance tax than 40%. If you get to 4 years, you'll pay a bit less. If you get to 5 years, a bit less, okay? So it comes down. But if you have gifted, say, 200,000, taper relief does not kick in at all because it's under the available allowance. So you give away 200,000. If you die in year 6, that 200,000 is still within your estate. It is only applicable to gifts over £325,000. So if you gift 400,000 away, the taper relief will be on the amount above 75,000. Basically, it will be tapered on that amount.
Okay.
So you'll just
Thank
pay
you.
less tax. So that's a lot of people are caught out with that one as well.
Yeah. So it's so confusing. I mean, all the laws they're designed to just make you give up.
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide is about the changes in the budget.
Okay, this is a big one, and this is something that we are doing a lot of work around. So when we talk about pensions, we're not talking about pensions that are in payment. If you've bought an annuity already, that won't be touched. If you have got a final salary, say from the NHS or the police or fire brigade or anything like that, that will not be touched, right? But if you've got a SIP, what you call a self-invested personal pension or a private pension, or you're still in work and you've got death benefits that would be paid out to you if you die while you're in service, and those death benefits will be paid out, a lump sum on your death, those will be brought into your estate from 2027. And this is huge. This is huge. I sat with clients recently who their estate was worth £550,000 between their property and some savings. They were well under the £1 million allowance, well under. But they had built huge pensions. I mean, huge, over £2 million, 2.1 million between them. So from April 2027, their estate has now gone from 550 to 2,650,000.
Oh dear.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So it's what I would say, if anyone if they feel they've got an inheritance tax problem and you have got money in pensions that you were thinking of taking out, you might not need it, but you're just thinking, I'm going to take my lump sum. Don't do it before April 2027, because right now it's tax efficient, it's exempt. And God forbid you die before April 2027, you've brought money out of a tax efficient environment into your estate. If you need it, by all means take it. But if it's, I stopped someone the other day taking money out just because it's there. And I said, why are you taking it? Well, it's there. And I said, but it's just going to come into your estate, which is already humongously taxable.
Yes.
Leave it where it is.
Best guidance is leave it until 2027.
Yes.
April.
Unless you need it, unless you urgently need it. The other huge shockwave that came is to do with if you run a small business, and I'm talking, it could be quite a big business, but any business that's not listed on a major stock exchange, okay?
Yeah.
So your entrepreneurs, your small to medium companies could be worth quite a lot of money. If you run a farm or you had agricultural land, right now we've got something called farms, basically have something called agriculture relief. Businesses, small businesses have something called business relief.
Okay.
It doesn't include if you've got a property portfolio of buy to let, that's an investment business, that doesn't qualify. That's part of your personal estate. But if you've got a trading business and it's worth £5 million, okay, or a farm, right now, if you died now, that would pass tax-free, no inheritance tax whatsoever to your family. From April 2026, they have changed the law, and it is going to be only £1 million that can be passed on tax-free. So if you imagine, if you've got a business or a farm, I'll take a farm as an example. You might have there's farmers out there, farm is worth £5 million. It's not in the bank, it's in the land, it's in the machinery that they hold. It's been in the farm for decades, centuries even, with some families, okay? They then die post-April 2026. £1 million will pass tax-free to their family. £4 million is now taxable. Now, it's not going to be taxed at the full 40%. It will be taxed at 20%. But that's still an awful lot of money. That's £800,000, almost £1 million, that family will have to find. Now, how do you just sell a tractor? Do you sell a bit of land? What do you do? It's an absolute disaster. The same for businesses. It's you want to maybe pass the business down to the family members, keep them in employment, keep it going. That is all up in the air. So it's really, really important to consider what you can do now to safeguard and keep that allowance going. Okay. Again, that's too much to get into today, but I'd be happy to answer anyone's questions on it. But it's just an overview from next year. Yeah, it's going to be really, really, it's going to be £1 million max that you can pass on.
And that's for both businesses, farm owners, everything except there's a question around if I have investment properties.
Yes.
And you're saying that's dealt with as a personal estate. What about if the properties are in a company?
It doesn't matter, unfortunately. Even if it's in a limited company or a partnership, it still is part of your personal estate and will be taxed at 40%. Unfortunately,
they are greedy.
Very, very much, very much.
Okay.
Honestly, because they don't see buy-to-lets as a true trading business, they see it as an investment business.
Okay.
And that's the difference.
The next slide is another interesting one, Angela.
So yeah, looking at women, and this surprised me as well, actually, that women hold the wealth because we live longer. Dare I say it, sorry to any gentlemen in the room, but we might be actually better savers because, potentially, I'm not saying all men are better at planning for the future though in general. The statistics show that more men will seek advice, because a lot of women, especially in the older generations, it's very much been left to the men. Thankfully, that is changing. Women are stepping up. Women are taking control. Look, I'm not relying on a guy here to deal with things. But if we look at maybe our parents and grandparents' generations, very much it was, you deal with the kids in the house and I'll go out to earn and I'll deal with the money. So 60% of the wealth in the UK is held by women, and that's quite substantial, really, if you think about it. So it's women, and they have to be stepping up to make sure that what they are passing on are they uncomfortable about inheritance tax. Some people say, well, that my kids are getting enough, that's fine. But if they do want to do something about it, it's not to wait for anyone else to come along and say, we'll sort this out. It's for them to take it into their own hands and understand what they can do. But we do live longer. We potentially, I just said about, the second marriages, that happens. Sometimes women are widowed, men as well, but I'm generalizing, but this is for women. Women live longer, they might have more time to remarry, they might have more time to inherit more, etc., etc. Talking about the older generations, definitely I see clients in their 70s and 80s, and they've been bereaved, and they are sitting there going, I don't have a clue what to do. I've never looked at this. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that stage is very, very difficult because we don't have the time
Yes.
do the planning that we want to do. And another thing I think that puts some women off is, and I'm not saying that across the board, but there is an underrepresentation. Financial advice and this type of advice is male dominated, and a lot of women
That's
are put
true.
off. They're put off, you know.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's part of the reason we're doing the webinar gigs, the money gigs we're doing is we just want women to be as empowered as possible and understand that we all have equal opportunities. And we have most of the time probably better savers, better investors, better long-term planners if we put the time to it.
exactly.
So this is a big one that I'm very interested in. How can I reduce the amount of tax that my family is going to pay?
Yes, so these are the main legal ways of doing it, and we only speak about legal ways because there's lots of people that tell me I'm hiding money under my mattress and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't work anyway. But the timing definitely is key. Is starting early, but again, I'm going to emphasize: don't give away money that you can't afford to. You need to think of yourself living till you're 110.
Yes.
And then consider. But timing is key, looking at it early. My favorite one, I've alluded to it already, is to spend. If you have got the money, if you have got assets, I will see so many people and they will be worrying about growth. And I'm saying, why are you worrying about growth? You've got an estate worth 1.8 million. Do you have enough money coming in? Yes, I do. Right. Why are you worrying about this money growing? You're growing it for the taxman. Spend it. Go first class, go business class, treat the grandkids, get your house extension, whatever it might be. But spending it in things that are not going to add value too much, because that's a problem as well. Okay. Understand your annual allowances and make use of them. Okay.
Yes. That's an important one.
Really important. One that's overlooked time and time again is if you have got excess income every month, and quite often I will sit down with people and go through what they're spending and what they've got coming in, and they've got an excess of maybe between 500 to £1,000 a month. Some
Mm-hmm.
clients, what is that doing? That's going back into their bank account, back into their ISAs, whatever. It's just growing for the taxman. So if once you have looked after yourself and you are truly okay, if you've got excess money, you've given your 3,000, you've given lots of 250s to nieces, nephews, whatever, you can gift money every month on top of that, as long as it's regular and it's affordable and it's from true income. It's not from investments, it's from actual income. Okay. So pensions, dividends, things like that. And that will be immediately outside of your estate. Immediately. But you have to do
And
it.
I take it, Angela, when we talk about gifting in this case, because I'm thinking about, I wouldn't want to gift to my kids in, too early. I would feel like they're going to get spoiled and stuff like that. But for example, if they were younger, you could put it in towards their ISAs and stuff like that. Would that count? If you're putting it into, say, a
Yes,
secured
yes,
account that they can only access at a certain age, that would
yes.
still count as gifting.
It would still count as gifting. And I'm just going to come on to that gifting. So gifting is the big thing to do. That's what's going to make a big dent, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes,
Where
yes.
the £3,000 and a few £100s a month is not going to make a huge difference. That's just going to kind of put a lid on your estate growing or help stop it growing too far. But gifting is one of the main things. There's two ways to gift. You can say, right, I've got £100,000 I'm going to gift. I need to survive for 7 years. I'm going to give it directly to my daughter. There you go. That's a direct gift. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you survive for 7 years, that will leave your estate. But if you gift it directly to your daughter and she is in a bad relationship, or she is a bit spendthrift, or she's just not good with money in general, she could do what she wants with it. You've got no control, no control. So a lot of people say, well, I want to gift to my son, my daughter, my grandkids, but I really am worried about outside influences. I'm really worried that they won't They won't do what I would like them to do, which is maybe get on the property ladder, etc., etc. So another way of gifting is via a trust. Exact same
Yes.
7-year clock, exact same, but the difference is it will not be gifted directly. The trust will own the assets, and the person who is gifted will be in charge. They can say when and how and who gets. Okay. The issue with gifting via a trust, it's an excellent thing to do, but you are limited as to how much you can gift. So you can only gift up to the available general nil rate band of 325,000. If you
Okay.
gift more than that, there's an immediate 20% tax charge, immediate. So, but the benefit of gifting via a trust, so let's say you've got children, you've got a big estate, you want to offload some money. You don't like your son-in-law. You want your daughter to be able to get her hands on the money and the grandkids. You want to keep it in your bloodline. So you say, right, I'm going to give this money to a trust. That's great. You can gift up to 325. That's fine. If you gave it directly to your daughter and she gets into trouble with her partner or the son-in-law, that's horrible. That money could go. The other thing is your daughter might be successful in her own right. She's got her own property. She's got her own pensions. She's got her own estate. Yes. That's potentially
Yes.
taxable if she dies. So if you gift your daughter £200,000, that could push her estate into the taxable realms for IHT.
Yeah.
If it comes via a trust, it will not enter that person's estate because it's legally owned by the trust, and you've got control over who gets it and when. And if your daughter ultimately gets divorced or becomes bankrupt or is vulnerable or is on means tested benefits, anything, that money is safeguarded for your bloodline.
And Emily is asking, the 325,000, is that for my lifetime, or is that every year for that
7
allowance?
years, every 7 years. Not for your
Good
lifetime,
question.
it's a good question. But if
Yes.
you think of the 7-year rule, we
Yes.
can gift up to 325,000 every 7 years. If you give more, I've got a client right now that's going to be gifting £7 million to trust because he needs it gone. Okay. And he is comfortable. He thinks he will survive for 7 years. If he gifts it to a trust, that 7 million will not enter his children's estates. It will stay within his bloodline. He will pay 20% tax above the 325. It's less than
Ouch.
40%, but it's less than 40%
Yeah.
if it leaves it, if he doesn't do it. So
It's still a stomach churning figure.
it's a stomach churning, but 40% is more stomach churning than
True.
20%. Yeah.
True.
So it's weighing up the pros and cons for your family, for your estate, for what you want to achieve.
Yes. So I like the one around investing in assets that qualify for business relief.
This is often overlooked, and this is
Yes.
I'm talking with my financial planner hat on, even though I'm no longer a financial planner. So this is not investment advice in any shape or form, but remember I said that if you have a business that you run and it is a trading business, it will qualify for business relief. That is
Yes.
now coming, that relief will be £1 million. But let's say you've got a big estate, you've got money in ISAs, investments, you've got your house, your estate's sitting at say £2 million by the time your pensions come in and everything. And you say, crikey, right, I really don't want to give everything away that I've got to get my estate down. You might do a few different things. You might give some of your money away. You might give it directly to your daughter, your son, your grandson, daughter. You might give some to a trust under the 325. And then you might say, well, actually, I've got this excess money. I'm willing to take some risk with it because it is higher risk, but I'm going to invest it into almost like an investment. You don't have to set up a company, but you invest it in areas that the government say, thank you very much for investing in this area. This is what we want to grow in the economy. And we will reward you with this qualifying for business relief. And as long as you hold it, there's no 7-year clock here. It's 2 years, 2 years.
Wow.
And after, so you don't give the money away, you keep it. You invest it carefully with a good financial advisor, and they would invest it and they would spread the risk for you. and it would be in qualifying investments. As long as you hold it for 2 years and at the time of your death, that will be exempt from inheritance tax up to £1 million.
That is really interesting. So, Angela, do you have any examples of what this could look like?
So we would be looking at areas such as agriculture, such as, wind farms, to do with what do you call it? Smaller businesses that are setting up that maybe need a bit of extra money to get them moving, but the government feel that this is going to be successful. This is an area that's going to create jobs, boost the economy, get people out of unemployment, etc., etc. So there are specialist investment firms that look for these types of qualifying investments. Now, they may pick 20 of them, and you put your money into 20 of these different sectors.
Yes.
Okay, different sectors across the board. It would go in. Now, 5 of those businesses might fail altogether, but the other 15 actually do really well. So it's just about any investment that you do, you go into a broad spectrum, you diversify, and you hope that some of your shares will go up in value because you know some will go down. But overall, it increases in value. So it's about spreading the risk across different sectors that the government wants. So definitely agriculture and sort of like wind farms are the big ones, or anything to do with the environment that we need to have investment in. Basically, that's what we want. We need money in those industries, so they will reward you. Basically, you may have heard of AIM shares, the alternative investment market. Again, they would
Yes.
qualify for business relief because they're higher risk. They're smaller businesses. Okay.
I think this is the nugget of this masterclass, is this investment assets that qualify for business relief, because we've been talking a lot about women starting to invest. So this would be
Yep.
such a clever way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You make sure you're investing in these business relief assets, and you're doing 2 things at the same time, because it feels to me, as someone that's keen on building and growing wealth, the idea of spending it all sounds really, a thing that would be new to advice, which I totally agree with. But definitely, this would be a very good way to balance that both, really. Really cool.
It is. And the thing with inheritance tax planning is not a one size fits all, and it's not one thing that you will do. It's a whole
Yes.
host of things. So yes, spending, annual exemptions, gift money away, gift assets away. Think about investing into assets that will give you business relief. I wouldn't put all your money into something like business relief because it's higher risk, but it's
Yeah.
proportional. It's looking at what your wealth is and what you are comfortable. For every £100,000 that you gift and survive for 7 years or qualify for business relief, that's £40,000 saved for your family.
Yes. Yes. And
So
that's a lot of
that's the way
money.
to look at it. And then the last thing that you can consider, once you've done all of that and there's still some tax to be paid, you may wish to take out an insurance policy, because
Okay.
definitely what you pay in, you're likely to get far more out. You won't see it because you'll have died, okay? But it'll pay out to your family, and it's almost like an investment in itself because you're paying in every month.
Yes.
They can be expensive, but then again, you need to work it out, but in general, over time, it's going to pay out more.
Yes, it will pay out to your family, and that's totally. Thank you for that, Angela. I'm conscious of the time, and I'm keen for us
No, I
to get
know.
onto the case study. So do you want us to get onto that one?
This is just, I'll zip through this so we'll get time for questions. So this is
Yes.
recent clients of mine. I've changed their names, but you wouldn't even know them anyway. It's fine. But this was a couple that I saw not too long ago, a couple of months ago. So 71-year-old married couple with their 3 children and 4 grandkids. They were referred to me by their financial planner to look at their estate planning. So when I looked at everything, you can see what they had, that they have got their house that's paid off. They've got a second property that is rented out, but they don't really need the income from it at all. They've got cash and investments of 400,000, and they've got a pension pot that they've not touched, worth 300,000. So when I add all of that up today, if they died today, the estate would be 1.1 million. They've got £1 million allowance. That's £100,000 that would be taxed. If they die after April 2027, which I'm sure they will, and I hope they will, their estate will be 1.4 million. So that's a significant increase in inheritance tax.
Yes.
So after chatting to them, I'll come on to the solution in a minute, but really we went through everything and said, look, do you need this pension pot? No, we don't. We have enough income from the pensions we've got already. It's just a nice bonus. And this happens. Are you taking money out of your cash investments? Not really. We're not really doing much. We're just like, we're saving because that's what we're used to doing. We save. Okay. What about the second property? Well, we don't really want to sell it because we'll be hit with capital gains tax, which is true. I said, okay. I said, what do you want to do? What is it that you want? And they said, well, we want to make sure that it stays within our family. We really, if the kids get divorced, we don't want it going out of the family. We love our children-in-law, but we are aware that things might happen. And I think one of their daughters was in a bit of a rocky patch, basically. They also had excess income. So their estate was growing by £700 a month. So this was just growing. Okay. So this was the problem that I was presented with when I sat down with them. So if we go to the next slide, Tina. So what I advised them to do, first of all, always spend. and so they're actually taking a fabulous trip to Japan, and they've extended it, and they're going business class. And honestly, the lady was telling me all about it. She's so excited, but it was almost like she had permission to spend. She don't need my permission, but it was, it just helped them. I made sure all our annual allowances were being used, as well as surplus income. So they're going to gift directly to their grandkids into their ISAs, actually, or through the parents. Actually, they're doing that. The second property they don't need. So what I've said is, why don't you give that away? You've got to survive for 7 years, but give it away. And if I said, is the property going to be sold? They said, no, it won't be sold. The kids will keep that. I said, so there will be no capital gains unless it's sold. So I put it into a special trust, and we're going to claim holdover gift relief, basically, or holdover relief on capital gains. So it doesn't take it away, but we've kicked it down the road. If the house is never sold, that's fine. So after 7 years, this 250,000 will leave their estate. Okay. I've also said out of their cash, they're comfortable to give £200,000 just now. So again, we've gifted that to a trust. And again, that will leave their estate after 7 years. The beauty is Mr. and Mrs. Davis are in charge of who gets it and when they get it, and it will not enter their children's estates. And the children cannot demand any money out. And if the children get into trouble or get divorced or become bankrupt or are on benefits and means-tested benefits, that money will not touch their estate. Okay. Yes. And then what I've done is I've made sure everything else is equally held. So their property is held 50-50. So tenants in common is the English terminology. And I've written their wills to make sure everything they pass from themselves do not pass to each other. It will pass to a trust. That means that if Mr. Davis dies and Mrs. Davis does remarry someone, she can only pass on her share, not her husband's share. And we make sure as well that if they go into care as well, only their half can be used for care fees and not the other half. Okay. And we make sure as well that we don't trigger tax on first death. That's a technicality, but we look after all of that as well.
That's such a good way to look at it, because that's one thing that one of the questions, actually, we probably won't have time for so many more, but a question around how do care home fees intersect with inheritance planning, and what strategies can women use to safeguard their property? That was one of the questions that we would probably wrap up on.
Yeah, so I can answer that quickly because it's something that's on a lot of people's minds. So they care fees and inheritance tax are two separate things altogether. So remember I said about gifting your house, it doesn't work, right? If you put your house in your children's names, even for care fees, it will likely not work either. If you think about it, if you put your house, let's say for care fees, right? Because we know it doesn't work for inheritance tax. But let's say you say, right, crikey, I'm worried if I go into care, this is my main asset. I don't want my house to be sold to pay for care. You then transfer the house to your children's names. The local authority will absolutely ask where your house is if you go into care. They will ask. And if you say to them, I've just given it to my kids, why?
Yeah.
Well, why have you done it? There's much more likelihood that they will consider that to be a deliberate deprivation of assets, and they will take it off you.
Yeah.
What happens if your son or daughter gets divorced or becomes bankrupt or falls out with you?
Mm-hmm.
You've got no control over your property. You are leaving yourself wide open.
Yes.
Now, what we can do, and this is perfectly legal to do, is
Mm-hmm.
that you can move your house out of your name into a trust. A trust is just a separate legal entity. And I don't know if we'll have time for these slides, but a trust is a separate legal entity that holds assets. That's all a trust does. It's a bit of paper, but you don't lose control of your house. It's still in your estate for tax purposes. So because you're living there, right? But if you go into care, and as long as you put your house in trust at a time when you were fit and well and you had no impending care needs, the local authority cannot touch it. They cannot touch it. So you go into care 5-10 years down the line, they say, where's your house? It's in a trust. Why did you put it into trust? Well, few things. I wanted to bypass probate. I wanted to keep control of my house, but I wanted to give I wanted to have some safeguarding around it and have some gatekeepers in the form of my children to act with me as trustees, because I'm really worried when I become old and dottery that I might end up doing something silly like marrying someone who's only after my money, or
Mm-hmm.
there's predators out there. I see this a lot as well happening. That's a very, very good reason. I want to make sure that if my kids get divorced or anything, I don't want it to be lost to sons-in-law, daughters-in-law, etc., etc. So a trust is just a legal way of holding assets. So absolutely, you can put your house into a trust as long as you've got no diagnosis of anything that could lead to care or any condition that I'm fine just now, but I'm on a slippery slope. That's a deliberate deprivation. If you're fine, you can have high blood pressure, diabetes, that won't lead you to care. But a dementia diagnosis, a Parkinson's diagnosis, things like that could cause problems. So
I
that's the
think
way.
that emphasizes the importance of doing it earlier than, sooner than later.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's no time frame for that either. There's no 7-year clock here because it's not inheritance tax. They can
Going
go back as
straight
far
into
as
a
they want.
trust.
They can go
Yeah.
back as far as they want. So, but yeah, I think we've wrapped that up. That a trust just offers huge, huge protection to your beneficiaries. None of us know the situation of our children or grandchildren or loved ones when we die. They could
Yes.
be fine today, but they could have had a head injury or an addiction issue or anything when it gets to them. They could be in a bad marriage, anything. You never, ever want to leave your assets directly to anyone.
It's been such a great session, Angela. Thank you so much. We have a go if anyone needs any estate and legacy planning. She's been a wealth of knowledge, and so we are grateful for you. Last but not least, please, we have a book coming out on the 1st of October. It's available for pre-order now, and we have quite a few events around it. So really excited, going to be going around the country, launching the book and reading from it. You can pre-order it on Amazon right now.